Searching for just the right job? Whether you're looking for full-time, part-time, or seasonal work, you can get started today. Amazon Jobs offer the whole package with great pay and flexible shifts that allow you to choose when and how much you work. Find a warehouse close to home and discover the role that works for you. To get your application started for an hourly job, go to amazon.com/apply. That's amazon.com/apply. Amazon is proud to be an equal opportunity employer.
Hashtag no music, no intro. Another episode of Hashtag Saints Twitter podcast. We are blessed with the presence of ESPN's own Mike Triplett, Big Trips. There's probably tons of combinations of names I could come up with, but we're not going to get into that. This is like your second or third. No, I think this is your third time on the pod. So you are
that feels right.
In an elite class. But I don't even want to talk about the Saints. I want to talk about this promotion that you got at ESPN, where you're not just the Saints reporter. Now that's Captain Terrell. You're like the NFL guy. Like, this man's making moves. So first, we wanted to like officially give you congratulations about that and how that even came about.
Well, it's still. I'm going to wait and talk about it when I make the switch. But I'm going to continue to cover the Saints. So
okay.
In the meantime, I'm bouncing around, doing a lot of fantasy stuff with ESPN2, which is something I've always been passionate about doing. But no, you can have me on again when we can talk about the next move next. But I'm not going to leave. I'll still be heavily involved in the Saints coverage. So.
Oh, good. And that's something I wanted to ask, because I was thinking about it all day today, and I was like, how long have you been covering the Saints? Because I feel like it's been almost as long as I've been a fan, which is a long time.
No, so I'll give you a little funny backstory. When I started working, I was out in the Bay Area, and I covered like the A's and the 49ers and the Sacramento Kings, like all when those teams got good. And then I moved down here and I started covering LSU football in 2003 when they won the championship. LSU women's basketball, they go to the Final Four. LSU college baseball, they go to the College World Series. And everybody's like, oh, you got to cover the Saints, man. They need you. And I started covering the Saints in 2005. And Katrina hit, and they went 3-13. But it's been good ever since then. So I'm still going to take the credit.
Yeah. No. I mean, honestly, that weirdly, that changed the game. And, it brought in Sean Payton and Drew Brees and, just a whole new era for Saints fans where, kids that are like 20, 25 and under, all they know is like a winning Saints team, like that's their Saints experience. So it's kind of weird.
Crazy.
It's so wild to me.
I know. Well, look, I'll tell you what, I kind of enjoy, you guys can feel this as well as anyone, I bet. I kind of enjoy the fan optimism right now, and I think signing 2 LSU players had a lot to do with it. But I'll tell you what my least favorite little period was they were flirting with a little entitlement. Like when the 12-4 seasons weren't good enough. That gets a little rough. Rough.
No, it's true. It's true. It's like because, like, I mean, that stretch like from 2017, it's like 13-3, like, oh well, who cares? Like Super Bowl, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Which is just comes with success. It's weird.
It's tough. Now look, I mean, they were historic. It was historic that they never went to a Super Bowl. I think they either tied the record or set the record for most wins in a 4-year span without reaching a Super Bowl. So it was tough. That's like a different. That's like a different kind of misery. That's a different kind of misery.
That's kind of painful. That's a different type of pain.
It is. It's a different kind of painful. Yeah. But look, here's the thing. Tom Brady has ruined the standard for everyone because nobody else has gone twice. Like Aaron Rodgers, one. He's got 1 Super Bowl appearance. Russell Wilson, 1 win and 1 loss. Peyton Manning with the Colts, 1 win. Like, that's everybody except Tom Brady and the Patriots.
It's absolutely, it's wild. Like you said, like Tom Brady, as it's skewed. He's messed up the curve. I feel in terms of like having like an actual intellectual type of conversation when it comes to sports and championships, because anyone who just knows sports just knows, A, it's super hard to win a championship, and then two, there's so much type of luck that's involved in terms of health, and sometimes just the ball sometimes goes your way in a season. Like, I'm not going to say that it doesn't matter about like play and talent and rosters and all that, but there's something to it as well, and it just kind of shows just how difficult it is, because the Saints haven't won one since 2009. But that's a question I wanted to start off with you. So you've been with the Saints since 2005. Me and Ryan talked about this a little bit on the show in regards to that training camp 2009, even remembering how we even got our training camp news back then. You just reading Saints Report or whatever it was, you just kind of felt like something was different about the team. I think I could say for myself, I felt something different about the team also 2011, when they went on, had a great season, ended in San Francisco. I actually went to like 4 of their practices when they were at Oxnard out here in California. And from the outside, just reading observations, it seems like this currently constructed Saints team may kind of have those same vibes. So someone who's seen this team practice on a day-to-day in training camp, do you get a kind of similar vibe from this training camp to maybe 2009, 2011?
No, I'm not going to go that far, only because 2011, I think it might be the best offense in NFL history. They've still got the record for most yards in a season, even when they expanded to 17 games last year. I mean, when we go down that list, Jimmy Graham, Darren Sproles, like Mark Ingram's the 4th running back, Pierre Thomas, Chris Ivory, Robert Meacham's the 4th receiver, and Jimmy Graham as a tight end, with Marcus Colston and Lance Moore and Devery Anderson, Drew Brees in his absolute prime, Jari Evans and Carl Nixon, their absolute prime.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an unfair comparison, but I think this team can hold its own with this current era of Saints, the 2017 through, like, I don't think that era is over yet. I think last year was a very unfortunate dip because of every possible thing you can think of, including losing Drew Brees to start with. But I think they were going to weather that storm and then just got hit with everything that could possibly derail the season. But there's an argument to be made that their defense was the best it's ever been last year in the whole 5-year stretch. So there is a definite possibility that now that you're adding a little offense back in, but there's a big difference between a team that could throw for 5,500 yards in 16 games and it's a different makeup. But I absolutely, without question, I'm predicting this team to make the playoffs, and it's a disappointment if they don't. But there are a lot of question marks on this team.
So, speaking of the offense, Mike, it's been kind of hard to gauge the offense just looking, from the outside looking in. It seems like the defense has been pretty, I wouldn't say dominant, but pretty good as far as handling things and, stifling the offense most of the training camp. Then in the preseason, Jameis has been injured, so we hadn't really seen him. They've kept a lot of starters out. We have seen, Andy Dalton kind of cook a little bit. So, I mean, how do you, like, what's your gut feeling about the offense watching them? Like, do you feel like it's coming together, or it's one of those things where it's kind of going to be a work in progress through the season with all these little different parts coming together that have to gel, over time?
Yeah, look, definite work in progress. I mean, Jameis Winston's never completed a pass to Michael Thomas in an NFL game, never once. And they haven't spent much time together in training camp because right when Mike started joining 11 on 11, then Jameis stopped. And then right when Jameis came back, Mike is gone. So we still want to see what that looks like. We already know now Jameis Winston and Alvin Kamara are going to be in year 2 together, but we already have a few question marks about if that's going to be more natural for him to throw to the running back. Yeah. We know he's going to love Olave, but he's a rookie. Jarvis is new. They're going to have a new starting left tackle, whether it's Hurst or Penning. So none of these questions have been answered yet in training camp. Training camp's a little too small sample size. Obviously, they're not playing heavily in the preseason, so I'm optimistic. First of all, we're all optimistic because I mean the receivers. Unfortunately, it was the worst total collection of receivers. I mean, it ranks down there with probably once they added injuries into the mix and the guys that they were pulling out of retirement and putting directly on the field last year, and now you're looking at Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, and Deontay Hardy as 4, 5, 6, and fighting off Kirk Merritt, who's trying to earn his way on, all behind Thomas and Olave and Landry. That is obviously going to be so much better. But I think the sneaky one is the offensive line. This team was winning games early. This team was 5-2 and should have been 6-1 because that Giants game was impossible to lose. Play that 99 more times and they win all 99. Like that was a win in the bank, and I can't believe it was a loss. So this was basically a 6-1 team last year, but they all the flashbacks and memories of the pain, like how bad the team looked last season, were after the offensive line fell apart. I mean, it didn't matter if it was Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill, Ian Book for that obviously ridiculous game that nobody was playing, but they couldn't gain a first down because the offense, 4 of their starting offensive linemen were out. And that was just, it was game over then. That's why Alvin Kamara couldn't run the ball. That's why no quarterback could complete a pass. That 9-0 win at Tampa, it was just holding on for dear life. Like the offense disappeared. So obviously losing Teron Armstead is going to hurt, but if you just have a reasonable amount of injuries on the offensive line, I think this is going to go back to being a top 10, top 12 offensive line in the NFL again. And that's just as huge as the receiver upgrades.
It absolutely is. And I think seeing the growth in Trevor Penning from his first preseason game against the Texans to just even a week later against the Packers, and kind of just reading the observations and the report in training camp, you can mentally, I'm not there, I can't see it, but I can see it on preseason games, but you can read the growth it sounds like he's making at that position, which is a huge thing for the offensive line to be successful. It also sounds like, and I guess another question for you is, do you buy this hype in Cesar Ruiz being an average serviceable guard in the NFL now?
Well, what a shame that they draft their 2 guards. Their 2 guards were drafted 13th and 24th overall, which, fan bases hate that more than anything in the world, but at least you want to have 2 Pro Bowl guards if you're going to do that. And to say those guys are question marks is such a shame with the investments they made, but they should be above average NFL guards, both of them. And Andrus Peat, Cesar Ruiz is probably the best thing that ever happened to him. He's just quietly going about his business every day.
We talk about it all the time.
People are almost excited to have him back in the lineup. It's his time, baby. But yeah, look, Cesar Ruiz is super talented. Zach Strief was talking to us about how Doug Marrone in particular is going to be really good for him, because all the offensive linemen have talked about how Doug Marrone is a super detailed teacher who talks a lot about technique. Eric McCoy was talking about this the other day. He said he's correcting a little hitch in his step that he's always had, and that no one has ever really corrected, that he's working on. And Strief was saying that's really good for Cesar Ruiz because he needed that. And basically they had no coaching for the last 2 years. And sometimes that's an excuse. You can say, oh, well, sure, all the rookies, it was COVID and no offseason. So Justin Jefferson appears to be doing okay, so some guys did okay with COVID shortened off seasons, but it does sound like he's healthy, full off season. He's getting good coaching. He's a talented guy who's in his 3rd year. I think it stands to read. Now, I haven't seen enough to say because they don't, they don't go full speed, full tackling, full padded all the time in practice. He hasn't played much in the preseason, but how can it not be his best season? I mean, he should be an asset at that position, unless, it's just never going to work out for him. But I tend to think, healthy Andrus Peat and healthy Cesar Ruiz is going to be a major plus for this team, even if those guys aren't, among the best in the league at the guard position. And then as far as Penning goes, Yeah, look, I think Hurst is really capable and really trustworthy, so they don't have to force Penning in unless Hurst isn't ready by week 1. I don't think that'll be the case. But every time Penning's on the field as a run blocker, I think it's going to be highlights. Whether he's playing left tackle or whether he's playing that jumbo tight end role, he's going to be a huge asset as a run blocker, even if the whole year is a work in progress in pass protection.
Oh no, I completely agree. Me and Adam have talked about it. The last couple of podcasts. I think neither Adam or I really expected Penning to be a day one starter because look, Hurst is fine. Hurst is fine at left tackle. But I mean, from what I've seen from Penning as a run blocker, I mean, it's hard to enjoy watching offensive line, but you enjoy watching him, run blocking. And as a pass protector, the strides he made from week 1 to week 2 of the preseason, that was encouraging. Not that he was just an outstanding pass protector in week 2, but I'm just saying you saw the incremental improvements, and I think that that speaks to him being able to become a good player in the NFL eventually at some point. Another thing I wanted to hit on, just as far as offense, how do you feel about this Andy Dalton thing? Something. I'm not. Look, okay, we've said it again. There's no quarterback controversy. James is the starter. This is not in question. But just watching the preseason game, man, it's damn, this Saints offense is kind of tailor-made for Andy Dalton. He's just getting the ball out, and then when you see him at the pressers, he's just smiling. He just looks comfortable. He's like, I got this. Do you get that feeling when you see him?
No, that last one is right. He feels like a starting quarterback. Now I'm sure we could talk to some Bears fans and talk to some Cowboys fans, and they could say he's not a starting quarterback anymore. But I think you're exactly right about the offense seems built for him. This feels like an offense, and this is my biggest question: is I would take Jameis over Dalton on any team in the league, but this particular offense feels like an offense you would build around 40-year-old Drew Brees, Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton. It's sure-handed, short, intermediate. Throw it to Kamara, throw it to Jarvis, throw it to Thomas. So I get that, and that's my biggest question: is those are not Jameis's favorite throws. Those are sort of Jameis's reluctant throws.
Yeah.
So is Jameis gonna learn to embrace Pete Carmichael drew up this great play that is designed to be take 2 steps back, throw it to Jarvis, gain 7 yards. And I'm not even allowed to look and see what Olave is doing. That's my biggest curiosity.
Ball is out.
Andy Dalton would do that happily. He'd be like, sounds great to me. I'll throw that pass right to Jarvis Landry, just like you said. So that's where I think the question comes from. But the only thing I would do is maybe if you gave me a time machine and I knew Andy Dalton only cost $3 million, and I could spend the Jameis money on a Pro Bowler somewhere else. Maybe there's an argument to be made, but there's no quarterback controversy. I mean, I think Jameis's upside. This offense is going to need that upside. I said, all those painful games where we were watching last year where they could not score a point. How bad did you miss those one-play touchdown drives from Jameis to Deontay Hardy when that happened?
But on the flip side, this is just me just completely just being a deviant. Does the offense really need that though? Because with this defense, all the offense needs to do is just be consistently and just need to move. I guess the biggest question I want to, and I've kind of dropped the whole Dalton Dimes, the whole red rifle agenda. But who's looked better in training camp? You've seen all the throws. I know Jameis has been hurt, and so he had time where he wasn't throwing, and he got ramped up slowly because of the ACL recovery. But when just watching them, who's looked better, running the offense in training camp?
Yeah, I mean, it's too tough to say because, I mean, you've been out to training camp practices.
Yes, I have.
Today, well, I'll tell you what's funny is you never really get a flow. You get 6 plays in a row, and 2 of them are run plays, and nobody's tackling each other until they do things like a 2-minute drill. And I think everybody would probably agree this was maybe Jameis's best looking practice because they did 2-minute drills at the end of practice, and he scrambled a couple times. He moved him down the field. He threw the the fourth down interception when he tried to give Jawan Johnson a chance because it was fourth down and he threw the pick, but then they came down and he threw a touchdown to Jarvis Landry. He looked really good. I wouldn't say he's being outshined on the practice field day in and day out. And there's clearly an upside with Jameis.
Oh, yeah.
That deep ball upside is the tiebreaker. Now, the best of both worlds is if we get the Jameis we saw when they were off to that good start last year, where he was like, hey, we're winning the game and I'm not going to lose it for us. And I'm going to move the chains and I'm going to throw 14 touchdown passes in the first 6 games or whatever it was. And then you can add in but if we're ever down by 11 and you need the hurry up offense and some magic, I got that waiting for me too. I think that's the right play for this team. Like I said, my only concern is, are you maximizing the absolute best you can get out of Kamara, Michael Thomas, and Jarvis Landry?
Yeah.
And look, maybe Jarvis and Mike Thomas are going to make more plays down the field than we're used to seeing too. Maybe Mike Thomas has been. Wait, remember that catch he made in San Francisco as a rookie? Like,
yep, I do. I was at that game.
The reason he catches 100, maybe the reason he caught 150 passes in the middle of the field was because that
he couldn't get Drew couldn't get the ball.
Yeah, Bridgewater threw him.
No more slap boy. Like. Slant boys.
I think Jameis completed one slant last year. He doesn't want to settle for that throw. He's like, let me look down the field first, then I'll see what's down here.
He's just wired. He's just wired that way. It's just who he is as a player.
Let me check. Let me just check. I want to see what Olave's up to. Is Deontay Hardy free? Just let me check.
Thank you for bringing up that name. Is he going to be on the team? It's like
Hardy.
Yes,
for sure. I mean, he's the kick returner for one thing. He's still a special kick returner. Now that the undrafted rookie that they paid a lot of money to, he might get the Blake Gilligan red shirt treatment, and they might not pay Deontay Hardy next year. But no, Hardy, when you're figuring out your 53-man roster, and this is what they're doing with Kirk Merritt right now, what are the 3 or 4 different things you can do? And that is Hardy's specialty. I can run the deep ball and draw the safety deep when you're not throwing it to me. I can catch 2 70-yard touchdown passes a month if you want me to. I can return kicks. I can try that end around that we haven't quite seen work yet, but maybe one day it will. That's a piece they like having. I don't think he's in any jeopardy.
No. I mean, we talked about it on this podcast where it's like, it just makes sense for him to be on this team this year. Like, if you're going all in, if you're trying to maximize this roster, it makes sense for Hardy, just have him. Just on the strength of the chemistry that him and James had last year in the deep ball.
Oh, yeah.
It was beautiful. Like, it's like, oh, he's catching the ball in stride, running into the end zone. It's a beautiful thing to see. Now moving on to the defense. Obviously everybody's expecting the defense to be, like a top 5, top 3 unit in the NFL. Some people think it's going to be like a great defense. That'll remain to be seen. But is it the real deal? Because it has questions. Like when you start poking holes and you look at the defensive line and all that, some questions there.
Yeah, I would bet. I think they're gonna. I think they're gonna have a hard time being as good as they were last year. But that's hardly a bold statement. The second half of last season, they might have been the best defense in the NFL. They were incredible for the second half of last season, and that's gonna be hard to top because look, Marcus Williams had his flaws, but it's not a coincidence that the 5 years he played for the Saints where, they were a top 4 defense and they weren't getting torched over the top. And now you've got 2 safeties who play a little differently. I think Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May are probably going to make more plays than Marcus Williams did, but are they going to give up plays now because they play a little more aggressive and take a little more chances? Remains to be seen. I love the corners. I think if Bradley Roby was a starter, I would feel perfectly comfortable. He's looked so good the last couple of days in particular. But Paulson Adebo is the MVP of camp. And obviously Marshawn lived up to his contract last year. CJ Gardner-Johnson's playing great in the slot. So I love that. If we're going to list Cam Jordan and Demario Davis is probably two of the three best players on the defense. Tyrann Mathieu, one of the six best defensive players. They're all eventually going to take a step back because they're all in their 30s. Maybe Demario Davis will never take a step back. I don't know what's going on with him. Right. That's incredible how good he's been. But those are guys who are not on the rise in their careers. And Marcus Davenport's the big. Well, I would say David Onyemata too. I think he could be a positive. He kind of disappeared last year, coming back from the suspension. It sounds like he's going to be a positive this year. But Marcus Davenport's the big X factor. There were stretches last year where he was the best player on that defense while it was the best defense in the league. And it's such a shame that he can't get a whole healthy offseason and a whole healthy season together because there's without question, if you told me I was getting 13 healthy games out of him, just 13, you're getting a Pro Bowl defensive end, I think out of it. But it's a big if.
It's funny you said that about Marcus Davenport because an even bigger what if is like Peyton Turner.
Yeah. But Peyton Turner is probably more in the Cesar Ruiz category. Like what a nice bonus would be if he looked above average this year. Because, it's almost like his extended rookie year. What a nice bonus if he's like the fifth man in the rotation on the defensive line. What if his career turns out to be like an Onyemata type career? Marcus Davenport has a chance to be like what Trey Hendrickson somehow became out of nowhere.
No, that's fair. What's up, Ryan?
Yo.
I'm just gonna say this. I don't want you to get offended. I'm a big dude. You a big dude. Damn. And I know sometimes weight loss has been an issue that we both dealt with our entire lives. But I want to tell you about something that I came across about this great new company called Vertimax.
Okay.
Did you know that Vertimax is the leading sports performance and fitness equipment company that's used by half of D1 programs and half of the NFL and NBA teams? We have an NFL podcast. It's used by professional leagues as well as other teams all around the world. There's the Vertimax platform and there's a Vertimax Raptor used to help athletes improve their performance on the field for almost 3 decades. That's almost as old as you. I know we pick on him, but did you know that we pick on him in terms of his workouts? But Jameis Winston actually has trained on a Vertimax Raptor, and the King of New Orleans himself, Drew Brees, has trained on a Vertimax platform, along with other top NFL and college football pro athletes. I was just scrolling on TikTok. I saw Amari Cooper using a Vertimax machine.
Wow.
We know we have a lot of listeners that have kids. They're in sports, they're in soccer, baseball, football, track and field, you name it. If you're a parent and you want to help your child improve in terms of their sports performance, or maybe you just feel like you just want to get your body right for the summer and get fit, you need to check out Vertimax. So all you have to do is go to Vertimax.com or follow them on social media at Vertimax. That's BERTI Max. Again, that's at BERTI Max. Vertimax.com. Look into getting yourself a Vertimax platform, a Vertimax Raptor, and tell me you won't see the improvement. Something that you hit on Sean Payton departing, and some of our listeners, our Patreons, had some good questions. Is it seems like, at least just listening to like pressers from players, everyone, at least initially in training camp and like midway through training camp, was just saying like just feels different, like the vibe's different. Like I just remember like Nick Vannett saying, I'm like, Nick Vannett's like the third string tight end. but it's just like this general consensus that things felt differently in the building. From what you've been able to gather, or just maybe just intuition, is there things that Dennis Allen's doing differently than Sean Payton wasn't, or was it just one of those collective, like, psychological things where you hear the same voice for over and over for years and years, and just hearing a different voice, even though the message may be the same, is refreshing?
Honestly, I've gotten a different impression. And I think I could see where it's dangerous, but I think the overwhelming feedback I've gotten is how much it feels exactly the same. Like, to the point where I couldn't get guys to list two tiny little quirks. Like, the best anecdote I got is when Dennis Allen told me the story about how he accidentally walked into Ryan Nielsen's office because it was his old office, and he tried to play it off and pretend like he had something to tell him. But no, like, and the vibe I got out of it was that players appreciate that, because they can smell the BS if it's changed just for change's sake. Like, if Dennis Allen came in here and he said, "Guess what? I moved all your lockers around. Now it's going to be every other locker is going to be an offensive player and a defensive player, and the meeting times are going to be at 4 p.m." instead. Like they'd be like, "This is ridiculous." And Dennis Allen's whole point was, these guys have earned this. Like, we all built this together. We built this 5 straight winning seasons, this winning culture. Dennis Allen got hired because they love this culture. What a jerk he'd be to come in and be like, now everything's going to be different. Like, he wants the players to know, you guys have built this, you earned it, and we're not going to change it because we like it. And especially in the offseason, a couple people have made this point. Somebody said it today. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Ronald Curry said it today. They won't really feel a difference until they get in the regular season, because even when Sean Payton was the head coach, during installs in the offseason, Pete Carmichael always ran the offense and Dennis Allen always ran the defense. So Sean didn't really come in until, game planning sessions and stuff. So to everybody, it's probably weird that Sean Payton's there. And I think when players talked about a different vibe, last year was I should listen to you guys more often. Am I allowed to say whatever I want? There's no editing button or whatever. I mean, last year was a total shitstorm. And I think everybody's so relieved to be back from that. I mean, everything that happened to this team, from evacuating in the middle of the third preseason week to spending 6 weeks in Dallas to playing in Jacksonville to all the COVID games they had. So that's why the vibe is different. But as far as things feeling different, like in the building, I think everybody, like, I bet once a week they're like, "Oh yeah, Sean Payton's not here anymore." That's more of the vibe I've gotten. Now,
interesting.
When you tell me to predict the record, I'm not going to shortchange Sean Payton. And I think probably what he is one of the all-time, like, he's probably one of the all-time game planners from team to team. He's probably one of the all-time adjusters from situation to situation. I mean, every time this team ever went out of town for a week, like Seattle for a week, and Drew Brees breaks his thumb, they beat the Seahawks, and they've won every time they've gone to London, and they go to Dallas and he comes up with this Jacksonville scenario and they dominate the Packers in Jacksonville. Like, he's going to be missed. I don't know how many wins to put on that. And the one thing I know is if they're 1-3, everyone's going to say, well, all the Saints tried to do is pretend like Sean Payton was still there. They didn't change anybody. They just brought back all their old coaches, and that was their fault. They should have changed, But for now, I forget every once in a while that it's like, man, this is just the same team as last year, but they've added. Oh well, they lost, one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. But besides that, they're cool.
Right? Exactly. Which is why I don't really, I don't get crazy about some of the big national media that might be a little down on the Saints, because it's understandable. It's like, okay, Jameis Winston is your starting quarterback, and you lost Sean Payton. Like, that has to mean something, right? But I don't know. Maybe I'm not going to say it doesn't mean anything, but maybe, they are able to win in just a different way. I'm so interested in Pete Carmichael because, I mean, look, Sean Payton is just such a dominant force when he walks into a room, and that's just not Pete. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know Pete is there.
Right.
And it's like, so I'm just so interested to see how that plays out when it comes to games, because obviously he's called plays, he's My God, he's been in the system forever. He knows it.
He
Back
helped
and
build
forth.
it. I
He
mean,
helped build it. Yeah.
he showed up. He showed up with Peyton and Breeze and New Breeze and they wrote it. Those three guys wrote this offense together. Yeah,
Right.
he's been here for the whole shebang. Yeah.
So it's like my question is, does he have it in him to be like, this coming week we're going to target this safety because this safety leans this way. When this route is, what I'm saying, like what Sean Payton did week to week. I'm so interested to see that.
That's absolutely him. I mean, that is him. He's as much of that as Sean Payton ever was. And actually, I've heard some inklings where Peyton's the one who had to reel. Everybody thinks Peyton's like the riverboat gambler, and a lot of times Peyton's the one who's had to reel. We went through all the years. We went through all the years where the fans would hate Sean Payton because he didn't run the ball. The you got to run 30 times to win a game. Like, I think a lot of that was Pete Carmichael doesn't want to waste time running. He has too many exotic designs. Yeah, he's every bit of that. He's the dynamic personality is the biggest difference. It's probably the main reason why he's never been a head coach. But as far as being in the film room and being like, oh, we're gonna destroy this guy because this is our ticket to winning, it's as much Pete as it is Sean Payton, definitely.
So I guess just a follow-up that I have from that is, do you know like what went into like, well, first Pete was gonna like take a step back, and then like it came across like they had to like talk him into or convince him to become the OC. And it's just something that Ryan and I have said, kind of during the offseason, like anytime someone's had to be talked into a job, it's not like the best.
Yeah.
Like, so do you know like what the heck happened with that? Like, it was just so weird.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding of it is that his initial instinct was this would be the good time to transition, step back for a year, take a year off, let Dennis bring in his own guy, let me be in a senior advisory role or something like that. The part that I cannot say for sure is, I mean, we saw some of the people they interviewed, and it's like, did they have those interviews and did they say, no, Pete, you can't leave?
Right.
But it didn't take long. I mean, I don't know if he discussed it and he said, let me take 2 weeks to think about it. You guys take 2 weeks to think about it. Let's reconvene, but it wasn't a pulling teeth situation, but he definitely considered, taking a step back this year after, well, I guess what is it for him? It would have been, this would have been his 17th straight year as the offensive, I don't think any of that signifies that his heart's not in it or that, anything concerning about that. I think once they decided to go with him, he's been all in, the entire time. So
is it as refreshing for you as it is for us when you guys ask Dennis Allen, why did so-and-so mispractice? And he gives an answer.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
No, what's funny is I feel bad for him because I know he wants to tell us that he doesn't want to give that answer. And my favorite is when he said, we're not going to go through all the injuries. I mean, it's just a left ankle that's going to take 10 days to recover from, but I'm not going to tell you anything besides that. He wants to not tell us. The dirty little secret about Sean Payton, though, is that he would give the answer 35% of the time too. Now, 35% of the time he'd yell at somebody and say, we don't answer those questions. But 35% of the time he would give the exact answer too. So he had to keep taking those shots. But, Dennis hasn't decided to yell at anybody yet. But, it's still the honeymoon stage.
That's actually one of the questions is, being someone in the media, do you notice a difference or, of how potentially DA maybe treats the media as opposed to how Sean Payton did as head coach, or does it seem
yeah, I would say early on one thing that I did notice is I'd say in that media relationship, trying to get a feel for, if you covered a bunch of sports and a bunch of events, every once in a while you go from the NFL where they act like the CIA, and then you go cover something where they're happy to have you there and they roll out the red carpet for you. And I wouldn't say Dennis has been that. And I think it's a reminder that Oh yeah, he was a head coach for 3 years and got run out of town with bad press and probably ended up having a messy divorce with the media and probably got beat up a lot and probably had people finding sources in the building saying negative things about him. So I think he's on guard. I think he's been, friendly with the media. I think he's been a little more open with some access things, maybe not as, like trying to control every single thing, but he's not a pushover either. Like, I think I've been reminded a couple times that this isn't his first rodeo. He's not just happy to be here. He's like some things that didn't go right the first time. I'm not going to let any of that stuff happen the second time, which frankly, he could be a real guinea pig for a lot of failed first time coaches. If he's a success, that could be a copycat, because I would think being a head coach a second time is probably a really smart hire in general, but it's a really, really tough sell. Like, and the Saints for 5 years to get this opportunity. And he was a guy who went, was it 8-24? Like, think about coaches who've been to the playoffs. Like, is Matt Nagy ever going to get another chance? He went to the playoffs, and he might, it's like once you fail, your name is mud. But if Dennis Allen has success, maybe in a copycat league, people will be like, you know what, maybe a second time head coach is a good idea.
Especially like his situation was so weird because he had like been a DC for like 1 year, then got hired. He was kind of on that fast track. Then he went to the Raiders at probably their worst time ever. Like, Al Davis had just died, had a new owner, son was taking over. They had like $80 million in dead money. It was just like their roster was a mess. So I think, with him, I kind of understood why he would kind of deserve the second chance, especially what he was able to show the last couple of years as defensive coordinator for the Saints. Like, the Saints has had like most terrible defense ever for years, and he was able to come in. Obviously, that has a lot to do with also Jeff Ireland coming in and get some talent in the building. But ain't no mistake, man. Like, it's hard. Like, nobody has beat Tom Brady more than Dennis Allen's defense. Like,
that's wild.
That's wild.
Wild.
Unbelievable. Dennis Allen and Jeff Ireland got hired in the same Senior Bowl week. That's a pretty good week. Right. They had a pretty good week that week.
Then
Loomis, Texas.
In the middle of a dark stretch for the Saints, they did something right that week.
And then after the Senior Bowl, they followed it up with Pete and Stephon Anthony and draft. Speaking of picks, I asked you to be a little concise about it because I know Ryan can just go on for days about it. What are we doing with Zach Bond? What are they doing with Zach Bond? Does he exist? Can he rush the passer? He's not a linebacker. They want him to be a linebacker, but he's like the third or fourth string linebacker. Like, Pete Warner's hurt and has a groin injury that's probably going to nag him the rest of the year. Like we have this third round pick, and it's just like, like if you're ever like going to a mechanic and they're like looking at your car and they're like, yeah, I just don't know what's going on with it. Like, that's how I feel like the Saints are with Zach Bond. They're just like, I don't know what does he do?
I'm not going to put it. I'm not going to put him on my 53-man roster projection the way the other linebackers are playing right now too. I mean, it's going to be really tough. Now, that's a position where we can watch these preseason games and we can say, look how good John Bostic looked on that play. Look how good Chase Hansen looked on that play. Look how good Nephi Sewell looked on that play. And it's all going to come down to, all right, who does Darren Rizzi pick? Because who's going to play special teams? I mean, I think Andrew Dowell is going to make the team because that, the fourth and fifth linebackers are basically only playing special teams, and then they play linebacker only if needed in case of emergency. So, but I don't have an indication that he's going to win a job based on special teams. And I think Eric Wilson's going to make this team. I think Caden Ellis is going to make this team. I think Andrew Dowell is going to make this team. I think it's going to be hard to cut maybe Nephi Sewell after how he's looked these last couple days or the last couple weeks. And like I said, Bostic had a good game. So Zach Bond might go the way of one of those. It didn't happen, and they ran out of time to make it happen. I don't see the path. I'm a lot more optimistic. And obviously, they were first round picks, and Cesar Ruiz and Peyton Turner that we talked about earlier. But Bond couldn't find his way last year. And now he's facing a more crowd, and those guys are playing ahead of him too every day in practice. I don't see it. I really don't.
Rob Ninkovich season.
I was about to say it reminds me so much of Rob Ninkovich, man. It's like I guarantee. I'm not going to say I guarantee you, but man, if Zach Bond gets claimed by the Patriots, I know exactly what's going to happen. I know exactly what's going to. The dude just rushed the passer with Wisconsin. And we weren't huge fans of him, but it was like, at least that's what he does. And I remember I heard Dennis Allen, he was talking about like, oh, we thought about asking Taysom Hill to come play strong side linebacker. I'm like, if you have that much.
Wait, did I miss that?
No, he mentioned it in one person, and I was like, okay, if you can think outside the box like that, why can't we at least try Zach Bond as an edge rusher? That's just a pure.
No, look, here's the thing. Now, look, that is one thing, and you can't blame the Saints for it, because Sean Payton, he had 5 different defensive coordinators, and they never wavered from this. But certainly Dennis Allen believes it. Then they bring in Jeff Ireland, who believes it. There is a reason why all their defensive ends. I mean, shoot, they looked at Carl Granderson and they said, 270's too light. You got to be 285.
Yeah,
they don't have any. They've never had any every once in a while when they do draft one of those guys, they have no idea what to do with them. Ninkovich, how about Haoli Kakaha? First year he comes in here, they're like, all right, well, the guy had 30 sacks over the last 2 years. Let's try it out. Let's try a 6'2", 250-pound pass rusher. They try moving him to strong side linebacker the second year. He's gone the third year. They just Martez Wilson. They're like, yeah, boy, he looks like a great player. They're like, you are not playing defensive end for us if you don't weigh at least 285 and you're not at least 6'3". So let's move you to a linebacker position. And, that's not your natural position. All right, well, you just don't fit on this team. And
you know what?
You could say that is not thinking outside the box, but there's, who's the best run defense in the NFL over the last 4 years? It's probably because of the way they like to have big defensive linemen and big linebackers.
I think they remind me a lot of how they try to kind of fit this, like the square peg in the round hole, is just like the Arizona Cardinals recently. Like, let's draft Isaiah Simmons, but like, we don't, like, is he going to be a safety? Is he going to be a linebacker? Let's draft like Xavier Collins. Like, we don't know Hassan Reddick. Is he a linebacker? He's the edge. Like, it's shit that I'm not saying it's to that degree, because I think the Cardinals have been like atrocious about it. Like,
right.
Absolutely.
Well, they
atrocious.
Actually were the Cardinals were one of the pioneers of the 230-pound linebacker who actually plays like a safety. They did that with a couple of guys and had some success, but maybe they got too cute.
Yeah, it's just funny to me. But then,
but
no, look,
don't. If you are an agent and you're listening to this podcast and you've got a 6'2", 235-pound edge rusher, don't let him sign with the Saints.
No, don't.
They won't. They might tell you they like him, but they won't know what to do with him.
Like, if we're being honest, like, who was like the last true, like, I don't know, speed edge rusher that was on the team? Was it like Junior Gillette? Because I don't really consider.
Yeah,
but Gillette.
Look, Gillette was close, and was he 6'2", 270, 6'3", 270? He was right on the border, and that worked out for him.
I think I'm just speaking more to just how they win, right? Like,
yeah.
Trey Hendrickson.
His bio read like that, but he was bigger. He was like his bio read like he might be a tweener edge rusher, but he showed up, and he was tall enough, and they put some weight on him, and they have not, the only small linebacker that I can think of that because they feel the same way about linebackers as they do about, like, Jonathan Casillas had a little good run there for a little while, and that was again. Well, Quan for the last couple of years, but honestly, I think there's a reason why, I think Quan flashed, but I don't think they felt like he held up enough either. Like, it's just they have a belief on what the front seven guys are supposed to do, down in and down out. And like I said, the defensive line has been the strength of this team over the last 5 years, and the front seven has been, and they've been the number one run defense in the league over those 5 years. So to all of a sudden try to get cute with little guys who fly around the edge, that's just not what they do.
Number one run defense, except against Jalen Hurts and these mobile QBs who can get outside the pocket.
No, not
quick.
mobile QBs plural. Just that one damn team, man. It's unbelievable.
But like it's funny because the reason they struggle so, and we're going to see this season, right? Because I believe they play the Ravens this year too, right? Am I on the schedule? Unless I'm tripping.
They do
right?
on Monday Night Football, yeah.
Yeah. So like, I think Ryan had tweeted this months ago, and I, even as someone who loves football as much as I don't think I even realized it, is that he just pretty much illustrated the reason why they struggle with quarterback or struggle with Jalen Hurts so much is that they just don't have the edge rushers that have the speed to contain him, because they're built exactly how we're talking, like power, build. But once he gets out to the edge, there's like no one on the team that can chase him down. So they see Jalen Hurts this year, they see Lamar Jackson this year. I saw Marcus Mariota in week 1 and I saw him against the Lions. I'm like, I said, man, they are gonna struggle to contain Marcus Mariota. Like, he's gonna at least run for 50 plus yards, at least, like scrambling. It's a feeling I have. And it's kind of the ones where you it's one of those things where you kind of give and take. Like, we're going to completely take the run game away from the running back, but it may cause us potentially to be, give up.
Well, that's what's so weird about those Philly games. I wish I could call this up. Well, I might be exaggerating this, but I might not be. I think you remember they have this stat of 100-yard rushers. They've gone like 70 games or something like that without allowing a 100-yard rusher, except Jalen Hurts twice and Miles Sanders twice.
Yes.
Both at the same time in the same game.
Hilarious.
Man.
You brought up Zach Bond. It kind of was a precursor to, besides him, who are maybe some surprise cuts you could see when it gets down to cutting down to the 53?
It's a tough cut, and I guess that speaks to. It's funny how everybody is like, the Saints always have the fewest draft picks of anyone year in and year out, but it's so hard to make this team. Like, I'm not positive an undrafted rookie is going to make this team this year. I think Lewis Kidd, the offensive tackle, might be the one who has the best chance now. Abram Smith's going to have a tough time, I think, if they keep Dwayne Washington and Tony Jones Jr., and certainly if they decide to keep Kirk Merritt. I mean, receiver is where the surprise is going to happen, and it depends. It depends if you consider cutting Kirk Merritt a surprise because he's had such a good camp and he's been getting so much notoriety, or obviously they have to cut Traquan Smith or Marquez Callaway. And I'm going to keep predicting the same 6 guys make it. And unfortunately, I mean, Callaway has really come on strong and played a lot of valuable snaps, but I think it's because he's the backup X and Mike has been out of practice. But if you're picking which 5 are going to be active on game day, obviously we know who the top 3 are. Obviously we talked about Deontay Hardy, and then Traquan Smith is going to make this team because he's the best blocking receiver. He didn't even have to get one ball thrown his way. Like, I know everybody, this is the one that's going to make everyone so mad. If Traquan Smith makes the team and Kirk Merritt doesn't, everyone's going to lose their minds. But they don't need 6 pass catching receivers. If Traquan Smith does make the team, it'll be because he's their best blocking receiver. And then week 1, we're going to see Marquez Callaway's inactive on game day. Well, it's like, you don't need to throw to 6 guys. Like, what else do you do? So that's where the surprises are going to have to happen. Now, obviously injuries fix everything. If a guy, if Mike's not active, I don't have any reason to think he won't be active week 1, then Marquez Callaway plays. But that's going to be where people are going to be upset or surprised, or because they're not keeping 7 receivers, and if they do keep 7 receivers, there's no room for 7 receivers to be playing active on game day. And they can't sustain that all year long once the injuries kick in. I think the defensive line is going to be tough. Like the one I have drawn up right now, I don't have the was it a 6th round draft pick? Jackson, is he
Jordan Jackson?
5th or 6th? Was he 5th or 6th round pick?
5th, I think.
6th.
Okay, he was.
The
6th.
linebacker was 5th, and the defensive tackle was 6th. But
I twitched them.
Either him or Taco Charlton or Josh Black, who's looked really good in camp. I'm going to have to force a spot for one of those guys. Tight end. If they're going to keep a fullback, which they always do, does that mean Nick Van Nett doesn't make the team, but he's their best blocking tight end? I like. There's places where the injuries will probably solve all of this, but I've got. If I was going to write down without doing the math, I'd write down 59 names, and I'd be like, oh shoot, I thought all 59 of these guys were going to make it.
Right. That's going to be so interesting to see how it plays out, man. It's tough. I mean, you could tell.
I'll give you the. I don't think Ian Book. I think this shouldn't surprise anybody after he's been there. But
no.
The Ian Book conversation to me is, I'd be very surprised if they use a 53-man roster spot. Now, I think he'll stay on the practice squad and still be the third quarterback. And if they need to activate him on a game day, they will, play those musical chairs. But I think it's really hard with what he's shown so far to think a team is going to claim him and he wouldn't pass through waivers because, I'd be surprised if that happens. Obviously, it does every once in a while. So technically, you could say he's a surprise cut because we haven't seen the Saints go with only 2 quarterbacks on the roster in a long time. But the greater conversation with Ian Book is if Jameis or Andy Dalton miss the game, then they really have the tough decision to make. Is he your number 2 on game day? Or do you have to go out and find the new version of Trevor Siemian? Like, do they trust Ian Book enough to ever be one snap away from playing this season? And that's a huge question.
Is the Taysom, is like DA just so done with the Taysom experience? Like he wouldn't even consider it?
I think I look, it might depend if it's a week. If Andy Dalton's on the COVID list this week, you don't change everything. But, if the same thing happened and, like one of them tore an ACL and you're like, all right, long term, what are we going to do? I think Taysom would be back in the conversation. I really do.
Taysom won a lot of games, though, man. Like
he sure did.
We talk about Taysom, but he won a lot of games. It's weird because we talk about the defense a lot. It's like when the team is like up against a wall, man, that defense steps up. Like they're like, because like every blade.
The defense is like, we got Taysom at quarterback. Oh Lord, we gotta bring it. Like,
I'll tell you what, this is a whole different pod, but so this is my 18th year covering the Saints. I think my number one biggest disappointment is that when it was finally time to be like, all right, it's time for the Taysom offense, I can't believe what it looked like. Like,
right.
I thought it was going to look like Josh Allen. I thought it was going to be
so unimaginative.
I thought it was going to be if the first guy is open. He completed 70% of his passes too. It's not like he couldn't complete a pass. If the first guy is open, because Sean Payton and Pete Carmichael designed a great play, I'll complete it to him. And if he's not, then I'll run. Like, I cannot believe how much time he stood in the pocket and how many sack fumbles and how he panicked and tried to throw it behind Alvin Kamara. Why was it not one read and run? And like, right. I can't believe that didn't happen.
I remember when like that all happened and I was complaining about the same thing on Twitter. And then like the response was like, well, like, they game planned for like, this is what Sean Payton's offense is. You can't just completely change an offense. I'm like, this man is the greatest, like one of the greatest offensive football minds like of all time. You're telling me that you couldn't for a couple of weeks just come up with a different offense? Like, and
the worst part was he was playing in Philly while Jalen Hurts was doing the exact thing Taysom should have been doing to them. Jalen Hurts did he complete 11 passes and he ran 30 times? It's like, that's what Taysom should look like. It's doing it right in front of you.
Well, the annoying thing was it was always like the explanation would be, well, Jameis is whoever is the number 2, but we need a week to plan and game plan to have Taysom as quarterback.
Yes,
because
that's what it was.
Because the offense is so different. But it's like, no, it's not different. It's like y'all trying to make him Drew Brees. It's like, no, let him run around and just do his thing. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I have two more. I don't know if Ryan has any more than to get you out of here. We don't want to take up too much of your time. Ryan, do you want to go?
No.
Do you
No.
have
Go ahead. Go ahead.
One I'll have is how difficult was it being in the media when the whole reports the Saints were interested in Deshaun Watson came out, and kind of having, obviously you work for ESPN, so you have to report the facts in the news, what's coming out. But how hard was that of kind of towing that line of, all right, I have to report this, but I may feel like a certain way about it, should I say this about, if how I feel about the situation? How hard was that for you, someone who actually is in the media that had to deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that made that easier for me is I don't express opinions. Like, I'm obviously not a columnist. I don't express those kind of opinions constantly. So almost like coming out and all of a sudden becoming like and I'm also not the most, as you guys can tell, active guy, like constantly sharing everything I'm thinking on Twitter. So that would have been a change in how I approach my job for that situation. And I did wonder if that situation called for that. I'm like, do I have a responsibility to, Mike Triplett, who doesn't usually do this sort of thing, is coming out and saying things now that he doesn't normally do. But my approach was absolutely going to be, and I commend Jake Trotter, who ended up being the one who got him in Cleveland, I was going to be the guy who didn't let him off the hook in the press conference. I wasn't going to let it be. I wasn't going to let them just be like, oh, we did our due diligence and we feel very comfortable. And I'll tell you what, I was almost, I don't want to say like when I saw Jake Trotter, somebody put like the transcript out of there and it said Andrew Barry Trotter, and gave him a lot of credit for, no, I'm not accepting that answer. I want to specifically know you guys said this and you did it. I'd like to think that's how that would have been more in line with how I do my job. And that's what I think my responsibility was. But yeah, no, I did not want my job to be, I like covering a football team and talking about football. And I know a lot of times it's about more than football. I'm glad I'm not covering a football team where that is the entire storyline all year round. And I think they really dodged a bullet there for sure.
Thank you, because it was just something, it was something that really like got into like Ryan and my, like, our crawl. It just made us feel like it was to the point where we were just gonna continue to do the podcast and it just not be a Saints podcast. We didn't know what we're gonna change it to. We were, movies, pop culture, it didn't matter. We just at that point, if they had landed him, like, we were just like, all right, like we're done. And I still think, like,
I get it. I mean, I could see how that would have put a real dilemma in fans. I mean, it's tough. Unfortunately, it's tough because every team look, I'm a diehard Cubs fan, and they won their World Series after trading for Aroldis Chapman. And I mean, like, those are tough things you have to weigh as a sports fan, and I get it. It would have been a very difficult vibe. It's hard to have. Yeah, it would have been hard to have the same kind of conversations we're having around the team right now.
Like, I'd much rather this. Yes, Deshaun Watson is light years better than Jameis Winston, and this and that. But I much rather talking about this than talking about 27 cases and did he really accept responsibility and train and suspensions, and is he really this and really is he, oh my God, I just would not want to have to talk about that. I'm sure you, as like a someone that covers the Saints, wants no part of that. Like,
yeah,
let's talk about football.
Whenever it can. Look, I take my responsibility seriously, and I just want to have blinders on and just talk about football, but I enjoy the football talk the most. That's for sure.
Yeah.
No, it's a lot better it's not something that we have to talk about it as fans. It still peaks, like kind of pops in my mind a little bit of like they were really interested in him, and I get upset, and then I just shake my head because like it was just a really disappointing feeling. The last thing I have, I feel like we're ending the podcast on like tough fucking questions. Not tough questions, but something that Ryan and I have just talked about, noticed, just brought up since we've done this podcast. We've been to the Senior Bowl. We've done, media-ish things, and we talked about it recently on this podcast. Is just kind of for all intents and purposes, besides maybe a few people, like the lack of diversity, and those who cover the Saints and the media that covers the Saints, and the Louisiana area is, and the Saints is just such a vibe and a culture, and predominantly African American and Black. And how can that be fixed? You have John Hendrick, you have Rod Walker, you have Ross Jackson, who are great. People, so yeah, people of color. Like how is that on the media companies for like not hiring? Like how can that, and how can we be better represented in the world of people, those who cover the Saints?
Yeah, it's a tough question, and I've noticed it too, and I'm well aware of the conversation, and it's it's a tough position for me to be in too, because we talked earlier about my free agency and looking for jobs, and I like to think that my resume makes me a great candidate, but why am I lucky enough to have such a great resume? Because I didn't face the barriers that I'm sure a lot of other people faced when I first got into the business to build that resume in the first place. I think the conversation over how do you get a job in media, period, is really, really difficult right now. I stand there with a blank stare on my face whenever asked me, hey, I want to be a sports writer just like you. What do I do? I'm like, well, when I was in college, I got a newspaper internship at the paper, and they don't have those anymore.
At the paper.
Newspapers don't hire people anymore. But then again, you've got you guys, you've got Nick Underhill, you've got John Hendricks, you've got Ross Jackson, Maddie. I mean, the amount of self-made people who have become really successful in this industry just by starting out with a podcast or a blog, or and developing a following. There's so many avenues in now that aren't even really, that are almost up to the people, and not even really up to the people who are hiring at the TV station or the newspaper. And you can't be denied. But it's tough. I mean, I just have never really personally been in a position to be making those decisions, to be hiring. I mean, certainly when I've recommended, I think it's been a big focus on the 32 for 32 NFL Nation reporters. I think our diversity has improved as that's gone along. Recent hires that we've made, obviously Catherine's replacing me right now. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that anytime I'm in a position to be able to do something about it, I'd like to think that I could, but me being able to tell you I have the answers, or I know exactly why it hasn't happened. I mean, in my case, I'm willing to admit I'm 46 years old. I've been a sports writer for 25 years. Maybe a lot more people when I entered the business, came from my kind of background, looked like me, and those kind of people have continued to get hired because we have the longer track record and the resume, and then fortunately, I was the one that ESPN hired because I think I had earned it on merit by then. But why did I have an opportunity? Yeah, it's tough. It really is tough. Obviously, I wish I had the answers to that question, but I'm aware of it, no question about it, and I agree with you that I'd like to see even more.
This is my last one, Mike, and I thank you for that answer. Malcolm Jenkins, like I remember, do you miss the old NOLA.com comment section? Because I remember you used to bat so hard for Malcolm Jenkins. And,
man, thank you for recognizing that.
And for him to end his
look,
career
I
and
didn't just bat hard for him either. I nailed it. Like he needed a change of scenery. This is the same conversation we're having about Zach Bond and Haoli Kakaha.
Yep.
Like it was not happening for him here. But I knew he was so good, and I was just like, this dude. I think I probably wrote, this dude is going to leave the Saints and he's going to go to 3 Pro Bowls and he's going to win a Super Bowl. Yeah, like I was so sure. I was like, man, I'm still like, oh my goodness.
You called it.
The Malcolm Jenkins hate, and you couldn't defend it either because it just didn't happen for the guy here.
Right.
Like I would have drafted him over and over again for my other teams, but there was a while where being a D-back for the Saints was being like a pitcher in Colorado. He just needed out.
I don't have any more. It sounds like you called your shot in regards to Malcolm Jenkins. We truly appreciate you coming on. We love your work. I've been following you since years now. It's been a extremely long time. You do such an awesome job covering the team. And we appreciate and I just want Ryan and I know you are absolutely one of a person who deserves to get promotions and things like that based on your work, because your work speaks for itself. But I also did just want to get your just your input, because you're in the media, right? We're not, we're pseudo media, but you're in it, and I do appreciate you acknowledging that it's a bigger conversation, on the whole that needs to be had. But I think you have provided us and the listeners a shit ton of information and insight, because reading reports in observations is one thing, but actually hearing it is 2 completely different things. So thank you so much for joining us. You're in the esteemed club of 3 people.
Oh man, who's ahead of me? Who's ahead of me? What do I have to do? What's the leaderboard look like?
Who's
Greg
been on?
Rosenthal.
Yeah, Greg's on there for sure. I think Greg Cosell's been on 3 times as well.
3 or 4, 4 times.
Yeah, Tony Pauline's 2. Kat's been on twice. So you're up there. I do want to say one thing. So I don't know if there's a mechanical bull in New Orleans, but if there is, when I'm there for the Raiders game, you have to ride the bull. I don't know why you backed out at in LA. It was me, you, and Nick, and then we went to that comedy show. You backed out. You didn't ride the bull. Next time in New Orleans, you got to ride the bull. It's
Here's the thing. Not only have I ridden mechanical bulls, I had ridden that bull at the Saddle Ranch in
remember
LA many times.
I remember.
I didn't have anything to prove. I'm comfortable with who I am. Nick had never ridden the bull. You can, so if you had never done it, you have to do it. But once you've ridden a mechanical bull enough times in your life, you can comfortably move on from that activity.
That was not the first time. So there used to be 2 saddle ranches in LA. Now there's just 1. But that was the 3rd or 4th time I had ridden the bull at a saddle ranch. But that was just the vibe. That was it. And then they played the Rams the next day and got fucking killed because whatever.
Wait a minute. Was that Drew Brees injury Rams, or that was no, that was
no, it wasn't. That was
that was the previous trip. They got killed every time they go there. Have they ever beaten the Chargers in San Diego?
Yeah, that's the game
beaten the Rams in LA in my
I don't think so.
Lifetime, I don't think so. And not even close, right?
No, that was the game where AK busted a 70-yard touchdown, and Brandon Coleman had a great block on the edge.
Brandon Coleman.
And then Sean Payton was like, no more Alvin Kamara.
Yeah. It was such a weird fucking dumb called game, bro. Just dumb. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on, Mike, for taking the time with us. I know it's late there. We appreciate it. This was great. Follow Mike on Twitter at Mike Triplett. Read his articles at ESPN.com. Saints related, fantasy football related. I don't know why I didn't think we should have gotten you in like one of the mini fantasy football leagues we're doing with our listeners on the pod. But thank you so much. Best to you, and continue to strive and get all the great things that you deserve, man.
Hell yeah.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
And with that, we're out.
Peace.